Okay, welcome everybody to today's talk. Let me close this and open. Let's see where we are. Okay, are you seeing the screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So we are going to be talking about Layoutit Grid, Views 3, and Vite. We like let's see. So Layoutit Grid is a CSS grid generator. It was started by Mariana and Agustin after attending an event apart with Martin, and they coded the first prototype, and they had quite a bit of success. Let me show you a little bit. So this is the current version. The idea is that you can generate like a grid layout, and you will get the code. So for example, like if you want something like a header and then a footer and a sidebar here, and maybe here will be the main content. This will directly generate for you what the CSS that you need, like with the grid template areas, the HTML, how it should be the structure, and you can create a code pen with it, or like get a permalink to share with other people. It supports nesting, it supports several features, and you can configure how the code is going to be generated. For example, like do not use grid template areas and directly work with the indices, with the line indices, or directly work with the grid template areas. So this was the tool, and actually, like as I said, like they had quite a bit of success. Like if you look for grid generator or CSS grid generator, it should be around the top. Like there is other kind of generator also, but it should be around the top. So this is mainly because at one point there were quite good mentions in Twitter, for example, like Adios Money from Google and Rob Dawson also, like they share it, and like it was kind of reshare a lot with a lot of people. And Layoutit Grid is part of the Layoutit, let's say, family that originally was a Bootstrap layout tool. And currently, the version that I just showed you is using YouTube. So, like we started working, Agustin had the idea to open source it. So, like now, like the part of this talk is like to tell everybody that it's now open source. Like you can go to GitHub and Labs Layoutit Grid, and it should be like there for you, like how to set up. Like you can install it locally, play with it, send a PR with a new feature, like some issues requests or whatever. So like the idea was to do it open source, and while we were doing and polishing the code base for the release, because Views 3 is just around the corner, I think is going to be released like in the next 2 weeks or something like that. We wanted to, like, we took the opportunity and like revamped the code base and did it like with Views 3. So the rest of the talk is going to be about like how that went and like why we are excited about Views 3 and Vite. So about any of these topics, like there is a ton to talk about. So like, and like I don't know, Evan, you did very good videos about Views 3 and the design principles and everything. So I recommend like you see them. I'm not going to cover like everything that is new or in Views 3. It's just like we are going to talk a little bit, and then like I want to live code some things. So first about Vite. while Evan was like polishing Vue 3 for the release, he like got a little bit fed up with the waiting times when developing with Webpack. Webpack, you know, like it's like mainly a bundler, so it's always bundling your application when you are developing. So if you change a file, it still has to crawl your file structure and like redo the bundle for the page to reload. So there are techniques like how to reload and everything, but still there is a lot of work. It's a really complex tool. So his idea was like he really wanted something that will start right away, like it will have like instant hot module replacement, and like when something like needs to be compiled, like it will compile on demand. And how he did it is like he did quite a good tool. Like I'm going to show you. Basically, like it uses ES6 modules and avoids completely bundling during development. Basically, it directly uses the browser for like importing, like using the native import of ES6. So and for production, it switched to rollup, and this is like only executed when you want to like do the building. But normally, how it works is like it gets up a server quite fast, and then the browser you ask for like the first files, the index file, and then directly the browser will start to import the other files. And it's quite amazing what it accomplished, and it's a lot simpler because it doesn't have to bundle. Let's talk about this a little bit. Let's do one try. So we can talk while we are doing it. So I will start a project so we can play with it. So let's say talk. And let's go there and npm install it. So, and one interesting thing is that, for example, Vue has a single file component format that is that you can use a .vue, and this is a format that the browser obviously doesn't know how to parse. And what Vite is doing is like putting a server in the middle that when the browser is going to request for a .vue extension, that server will intercept that, will compile the .vue file on the fly, and will give back directly a JS that the browser can import. So really, when you change something, you are only like recompiling that particular file. So this scales really well. Like if you are doing, for example, like a big static site, like with a lot of blog posts and these kind of things, like when you edit only one post, if you have like, it doesn't matter if you have 1 million, like it will only cost you that compilation. And the same thing, like it can compile on the fly Markdown, or Vite also supports React, Svelte, and there is other kind of like it's a general tool. It's not only for Vue. So this already has generated. Let's go here. If the font is too small, let me know. So this already generated the code, and we can run Vite in dev. So I'm executing the task, and it is done. Like that was how much it takes to start. Like it compiled the application. It didn't compile anything. It didn't bundle anything. It just started the server, and now is waiting for localhost to do a request. Like no files were like compile, transpile, whatever. Like nothing. It just started. So it's quite a different world compared to Webpack. And like there are certain optimizations. For example, like if you do this with like all of your dependencies, and the browser has to start like crawling all your node modules, it can be like quite at the end, like you end up choking the browser. So it detects the text that you have certain dependencies, like for example Vue here, and is going to like precompile them and optimize them. So that particular one is directly only one JS that you can import, and it's not crawling everything, because actually during development you are not going to be touching and modifying Vue. So you only care that like your files are in this particular mode. So if let's go to localhost, and we have here the demo app. It's a Vue app that has a count button, and when we press it, we have some counts. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about this soon, but first let's go back a little bit. Until here, how are we? Like, do you understand how Vite is different from Webpack? Was that clear?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I assume yes, okay. So let's talk a little bit about Vue 3 before going forward with the code. Basically, like it is really interesting to see how much cross-pollination there is lately between React, Vue, Svelte, like Angular, also like all the Vue frameworks. For example, like when React introduced hooks, it really pushed the other frameworks to like rethink how they were exposing reactivity, and because there were a lot of benefits in how hooks actually let you easily compose and share functionality that is like independent from the components. Like you can, before, like you will have like your functionality spread in several different life cycle hooks, and with hooks you can really like put all that functionality together and extract it in a custom hook easily. So actually, like that push it like for Svelte 3, and like that with a completely different take. And Vue was in this rewrite from Vue 2. So it also informed it about like how things were going to be in Vue 3, and they play with quite a bit of different like designs. And I think like the one that end up being is quite interesting. So what they are exposing right now is like something called the composition API. We will see it in the code, but basically it's different from hooks. It's kind of in spare. You will see like the same like use like for the custom hooks in the way of React, but it's quite different how things work. It's mainly like an exposing the reactivity model of Vue 2 that was already there, but it was internal, exposing it to the outside and making it like kind of independent. You can even use the reactivity of Vue without Vue right now. There is also a lot of work that have been done like with performance. One really interesting thing about Svelte and Vue is that they are template based, and this lets them apply certain optimization that are really difficult in React. You know, like with JSX in React, you have like really like a lot of flexibility because what you're writing is JavaScript directly, and you have the full power of JavaScript, and you can modify absolutely everything. But that also means that it's really dynamic, and it's quite difficult to know what is going to change. So the virtual DOM in React, it really needs to go over like all the nodes, and really do the diffing like again, there are a lot of optimizations and you can do in the way, but you have to like kind of push for that optimization at some point. With Svelte and Vue, the templates system is a lot more restrictive. For example, like I show you like a template, a normal template in Vue. You will have like the dynamic parts are like, for example, like if you want a paragraph to show, you will use a directive that is called if, and you pass like a variable there, like, okay, that if it's true or false, and this is going to like show this particular block, this particular paragraph, depending on that variable. But inside that particular block, this other span is completely static, and the same goes for the div outside. Like this other paragraph of like with the class text is also static. So in Vue 2, the virtual DOM like diffing was working quite similar to how React was working, but in Vue 3 they actually now it works with a blocks tree. Basically, they detect what are the parts that are going to be dynamic with this if, and there is also a before, and they create blocks. And so when you are diffing, you can consider that everything that is inside a block is static, and you only check that particular tree of blocks. So what is interesting is that this scales with the number of dynamic parts and not with the number of nodes like it was before. So you can have like enormous templates and without that performance issue hit that you had before. And inside each block also, for example, like this message is how you output a variable there in the template, and that also you can detect what are the parts that like are going to be changed and add dynamic. So all this is registered for each block, and it can do quite direct updates, let's say. So with this strategy, like it really improved like a tons the performance. Vue 3 is also modular. Now, as I said, like reactivity is a completely separate module that you can use outside. The core is a lot smaller, and what is good about this is that all the code now is tree checkable, and if you don't use a feature, you don't pay for it. So this is also quite good, and they rewrite it completely from scratch using TypeScript. You don't have to use TypeScript to use Vue 3, but because they use it internally, it is more maintainable, and the types definitions are exact. Like you have very good type definitions, and there is like tons of features like teleport that is like the equivalent of the portal in React, suspense working exactly like the suspense in React, but exactly more or less, and like a lot more things that again like there are tons of talks that you can see like to really explain each of them. So, and it's interesting to see the evolution like during the coding of like the design of Vue 3. They did it in the open. Like after a while, it was in a private repo, but after a while they open it, and there was a RFC process, and a lot of the discussions are directly there. And it's really interesting how they were changing. For example, like Vue 3 was going to be using like a class design, like Angular with decorators, and then after decorator failed, they had like tons of issues to try to properly use TypeScript and to support TypeScript with the class system. So they migrated to the composition API, and everything it was done in the open. They were also playing at one point with time slicing, like trying these things that React is trying to do with concurrent mode, that you try to like do async the update of the DOM, of the render, so you can have like a wait a minute. But again, like it was really interesting how we're changing and how the other frameworks and the problems with other frameworks also inform these decisions. So again, like it's a good idea to go and check for the talks that are quite good. What I would like to do now is to code a bit. So let's check. We have like the app. Let's grab. So we have this, and there it is. Okay. So let's code a bit. If we go to the hello world.vue, this is what I was. Let's keep the terminal to show. So this is a .vue file as the single file component of Vue. You have a template section where you have this static template where you can have like VE for before for like the dynamic parts. And there is like, for example, like if I want to put like a message, like a variable there, I can do it like this, like in the mustache, and then we can check a bit how things work. And then there is a script section where you put the logic and the reactivity part of the component, and you can also have a style section. And what is quite interesting about this style section is that it can be a scope. So anything that you do in this section is only going to affect this particular component and is not going to leak CSS modules work and this kind of frameworks to do in CSS for components. So, for example, like we can, let's say that here we are doing like on click, we are doing count ++. This is why when we press, it is incrementing. This was how it was done, like normally in Vue 2. You have a data section where you can you return what's like a set of variables that are going to be reactive. In this particular sense is count, and anytime that you change count is going to redo again, like re-render it. And there is several sections, so you have like also computed, and in the computed section you can specify, for example, like double. Let's count 2. And with this, we are specifying like a new variable that is going to be a computed variable. It's called double, and it depends with by the reactive count variable, and we can, let's say, here instead of this. So here we are going to show the value of double. And as you see, as you saw, like I just saved, and you see how it was directly hot reload the component like quite fast. So like this is the way that you declare like computed variables. You can declare more here, and this is part of the reactivity system of Vue. So basically, when it executes the computed double, it realizes that you are accessing count, and every time that count is going to change, double is going to be recomputed. This is similar to how, like, for example, like recoil works now in React, or how stores in Svelte work with the writable and derive. And you can have other section also that's called methods. And here, for example, like we could create an increment method, and this is going to be this.count plus. So here, instead of like when clicking doing this, like we can call increment. So as you see, like everything is working, and this is how like Vue 2, like normally you will do the components. Like, so you will declare them in sections, like these are my props, this is the reactive data, this is the computed derived method variables from the reactive data or the props, and these are all the methods that are exposed to the template for like working with it. And the problem with this is that if the same thing that happened with React in that regard, that like if you want to share functionality, and that functionality requires that you have like something that is reactive, some computed values from that reactive, like some methods that you need to be calling, and at the end, like all your functionality is spread in several sections. And like if you want to like remove it and share it with other components, the only way to do it is like using a mixin. But mixins, in the same way that with React there were a problem, you have naming collisions, and it's not quite ideal, the solution. So what Vue 3 did is like, it's called like the composition API, that basically what it does is that it exposes a new function that is called setup. And in this setup function, you directly define in free form all the reactive, all the computed, all the methods that you want to expose to your template. So we're going to import ref from Vue. Ref is a kind of reactive box that is part of this reactivity module of Vue, and we can actually like call, let's say, like const count equal ref of 0. So there we are defining the equivalent, let's say, of this count here that is reactive. So let's remove this. If we want to do computed values, we also have a new computed function. Here. So we're going to do like const double equal computed, and computed receives a function, and this is going to be count plus 2 by 2. And The problem here is that count is actually a ref, is kind of a reactive box. And if you want to I see that Francisco is saying that there is no audio, like everything is fine for everybody else.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. So you don't access directly to this particular refs. If you want the value that is inside that particular box, you have to actually ask for it. And you ask for it using a dot value. So this is how you declare computed variables. Again, like when it's the first time that this is evaluated, is going to know that you are accessing count. So every time that this ref is going to change, double is going to be recomputed. This, a good analogy is how a spreadsheet work, that like you define something in a cell and then another cell depend on another cell, and whenever you change something, like all the spreadsheet is recomputed. So that will be like how this computed method work. And then if we want a method directly, we can define a function that is going to be increment. And we are going to do like count.value ++ here. And as you see, like we are not using anymore this. That is quite interesting. It's the same thing that happened in React. Like this for Vue in particular was quite magical how it worked, because this particular this was not the this that was in methods. It was not the this that was in computed. It was injected when these methods were called. So it was quite magical how it worked before. And now the only thing is that instead of saying like this count, you are saying like count.value. So it's not that bad, but I think like there will be like it will be good if there is something like, for example, like in Svelte, when you work with the stores, you can do this, and this is the value of the count. And this can be implemented because, again, like Vue, the .vue file, it's going to be compiled. So maybe at one point, like there can be plugins or things that do the same kind of stuff that Svelte is doing to have like better developer experience in that regard. And again, like when you use these dot values, there will be like a lot of gotchas, like people forgetting about them, and you really need like linters and the tooling to be there for you to help you remember these kind of things. So with these things, like we have now the method, we can remove this, and the setup function is going to return count, double, and increment in any order. It doesn't matter how you order them. And you can see that with this, like if we have some other functionality, we could have it like here, another ref, another computed, another method that is like for like doing the same feature. And actually, if you want, you can directly this like extract it in a kind of like something like const, let's say like count, double, increment equal use counter, and this use counter is going to, inside of use counter, we can create the ref, we can create the double that depends on this ref, and we can create an increment that will increment the count. And this, again, like it should ring a bell of how we do things in React. The main difference here with respect to React is that this setup function is only going to be called during setup, like at the beginning of the component life, and it's only once that is done. So all these like use counter and all these things is going to be called only once. all the reactivity graph will be formed. Like, so you will have some reactivity variables, you will have some computed values that depend on them, you will have method that can interact with that values, and all this graph will be static. Let's say you can like add up later dynamically more of these variables, but for the component later is done. Like the template will react to that changes, but it's not run like in React that on every render you run all the hooks again. So with this return from the setup function, we are exposing like the variables there. So if I control save, this should be still working. So this is the composition API in Vue 3. Any questions till here? No. Okay. Okay. From time to time, somebody say something, so I know that it's working. So let's go one step further. That is quite interesting how it works. Because normally when you have these small components, the main thing that you are doing is writing this setup function. Like almost everything that you are doing in your script is basically like a lot of boilerplate to be able to write this setup function. One experimental feature of Vue 3 that probably is going to be like released like as non-experimental soon also is basically you can create, instead of creating a script, there is a new tag that is called script setup. And with a script setup, what you do is saying like, let's do like this. You can still export a default if you want to define your props, for example, or the name of your component or whatever. You can still export a default. Like let's do this afterwards. But then you don't need anymore to write the setup function like this. You directly can work in the script file. So, this is not needed anymore. So what you do is directly writing all your variables, and this, if you see, is quite like a Svelte, like we did another talk about it, in the sense that you will define certain variables that are reactive or computed or methods that you will expose to your template. And the difference is, like in a Svelte, everything that you define in the script is exposed to the template. And in Vue, like normally Vue is really explicit with this, like you have to define what you are exporting before these options that where you have like methods, computed, and data, and later in the setup function, like returning exactly what you want to be exposed. And in this script setup function, what you do is actually using export, like in the ES6 modules, to export what are the variables that you want. So you can define in the middle of this, you can define whatever functions internal to your component you would like, and then you just like export whatever you need. This is also like kind of like cross-pollination from Svelte. Svelte uses the export keyword to actually define what are the props of the component. In Svelte, if you export something like a variable from the setup, the script, that is going to be a prop that you can modify. And in here in Vue 3, instead of like using it for that, you are actually like defining the props like normally, or if you use TypeScript, you will do a type declaration. But like the export lets you decide what from your script is going to be available in the template. So here, right, you can see that things are working fine without problems, and this is actually like quite nice. Let's say like it's a lot of boilerplate that is reduced, and it's really nice to work with. Again, like if any of these logic will get complex, you can extract it to other files. Like this is JS code without like that is independent from the templating system of Vue. So you can remove it. You can actually like code something with this that is going to be used for something completely different, like a CLI, or like that's something that doesn't have even a view. And then when you need a view, you can like create a component, put a template, and use this particular functionality. So and again, like if you want to share functionality, it's really easy to extract this in a, let's say like a custom hook. Let's say like it's different from React, but it's the same concept, and you use it in both components. So this is how like how we code it everything now in Layoutit. I will show you in a bit how that is done. I wanted to show you just a bit. For example, like if we, let's say that we have this button, and we put like button, and let's say background color. So let's say blue. So there is the background color blue of the button. That's not quite accessible. But what I wanted to show you, that let's do this a little bit bigger so we can see it. So this is the count. What I wanted to show you is, if let's put a command, if I toggle autosave, and I have the autosave in like 300 milliseconds. So like when I modify something, it's going to save automatically. And Vite is doing things so quickly that like if we, for example, like start to play with the colors, you can have like directly like editing like you will have in the browser, you know, when you are using the dev tools. But I'm editing the color that is in the code. Like this is working like directly doing the serving of the new file, and this is quite a change, and really interesting in the sense that it's similar to how things worked like a long before, that you just like code it in an HTML file, and the browser was directly viewing and watching that file, and you modify it and you have directly the change. We kind of, with this, we can be back to that. This is really this fast, and this is not only because this particular project is small and you only have like one component, so you say, okay, like this is just because it's small. This really, if there will be like 100 components, it doesn't matter, because it's just reloading this particular file. So just that is really fast. It's really interesting to develop with this. Again, because we are kind of in the edge here, in the sense of like Vue 3 is not released, Vite is not in like even in 1.0. So there will be problems. Like this shouldn't be used for production at all right now. When Vue 3 is out, yeah, it's really battle tested. Like they are in the release candidate 6 right now or something like that. And so Vue 3 is going to be there, but Vite, like we have to wait a little bit for using it. And also the same thing with like this new composition API and writing things in this way. There are gotchas to take into account. Like I think it's quite ergonomic the way you work with it. But for example, like one thing that is not like obvious at the beginning is that this is not really a script tag, in the sense of when you put something in a script, normally the things that you do there are executed only once for your application, because that is how imports work in JavaScript. So you can place like variables that are local to that module and are only going to be executed once. But in this particular script setup, how things work is that this code is going to be executed once per component when it's mounted. So every time that a component is mounted, there is going to be a new ref. There is going to be a new computed variable. There is going to be a new increment function. That is not a problem. It's the same thing like that with React hooks. But if you have something like a very heavy variable, like for something like a cache or something, you have to remove it from here. You can do like another script, or you can import it like from another module. So it doesn't do this thing that is actually like kind of that particular setup function that like flatten in a file. So there will be gotchas, and also something that is like it should be set. If something is working and things how are in Vue 2 are working, like you don't have to rewrite everything, and you don't have to be chasing the latest and the newest, because that's not productive at all. But it's really interesting to see where we are heading. And like I think that tools like Vite or like a Snowpack are really going to like modify and really improve the way how we work. So how are we until here? Like any questions about Vue, Vite, Vue 3, like anything?
Not for now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And so if there are other questions, like I want to do a live coding now in Layoutit, like that is going to be like everything is going to work like this, and it's going to take like maybe another let's say 15 minutes. Again, like if you have to go later, you can see it. If you can stay and we do it together, is good also. But let's say like this is like one part of the talk, and now it came like an addendum for anybody that want to stay a little bit more. So let's open Layoutit. For recent Layoutit. Okay, we can close this. So this is Layoutit. One thing that I wanted to show before, if we go to Grid Layoutit, let's go to the developer tools. So we are doing a Lighthouse report, And you can see that the current grid layout, it is like really good. Like it has like quite good performance. It's a small app, so like it's taking like 1 second to load. There are some issues with accessibility, like for example, like buttons that only have an SVG icon, and it doesn't have like a area label, so screen readers can read it. So that is a problem. And then there is some problems with background and foreground colors, like the contrast is not enough. There are some problems with SEO, for example, like there isn't a meta description, and this could help. And for example, for best practices, the links that are blank, they should have like a no opener or no refer. If no, there is a security issue. This is something that actually I didn't know, and it's quite interesting that Lighthouse is telling you, and it's quite easy to solve. You just like put this rel in the link, and that's it. So this is the one, and I wanted to show you Layoutit Grid. So we're set up. So this is a deploy of the open source version. There are some little changes apart from the rewrite in Vue. For example, something like the grid template areas are now aligned, so you can really have like a matrix and like exactly see, for example, like if I put A, B here, you can see exactly like how things are, like how it works, the CSS. Like it's really visual. The specification actually of grid, you directly define where you want your areas to be sitting in your grid. So that in particular, and if we go to developer tools here, and we generate a report for Lighthouse here, we can see like we have 100 everywhere. And again, like performance, this is something that maybe Vercel is also quite fast in the regard, but now the code is half the size of the previous version. Like with Vue 3 is smaller. We are using actually suspense in these components. So all the code from Prism, that is a syntax highlighter, is not loading for the first paint, but is using suspense to first only load the text without the formatting. And when the Prism is there, it's actually like going to show it. And that is like back 20% of the size right now. And it's a flash that you almost don't see. But with this kind of things, like we really like remove like a 1/3 the time to load it, and this is with a good connection. Like if you test with a really bad connection, like this will really improve, like because it can be the difference between like 5 seconds and 1 second, that it really makes a lot of difference for the impression of the user. And the other things, the accessibility, SEO, and best practices are only that things that Lighthouse were telling us that just put a meta description and that's it. So it's interesting to see that with Vue you can have like it's a small tool, but it's a quite dynamic and complex tool, and have this kind of like scores there. So let's go to Layoutit. So I have opened here. You can see that I have like a lot of components. Like if you see the grid, we have a grid editor, and so like we have the grid editor. You have like the props sidebar with the options. You have the live code, also components for the other sidebar, and it's the same idea of like using components to really break the complexity in smallest pieces of React. And what I think that it would be cool to do is like implement a little bit quick a feature. So we do something useful while looking the code. And something how things work. Let me close this and actually fire up the. Let's fire up the dev. So you saw again, like Vite is open in no time. Like really, like we didn't wait again. And we can go to where we are here. So we can go to localhost. So here we are in localhost and seeing the application. And again, like no time at all. So what I wanted to do today is we have this issue right now with how things work, is that if you actually say, like, I don't know, like you put a sidebar here and then you say like, oh no, but I didn't want you to put a sidebar here because I want the header to go over it and I want the sidebar to be smaller. And there is once it is done, you don't have a way to edit it. And you can always remove it and do it again. And that is how people that want to modify something are doing it. But if you already have, for example, like a nested grid, like say, like if we have sidebar, we save it, and then you can actually press this button to add a subgrid, and you are going to be editing this little part, and you can add like options, and here it can be like, I don't know, config. So you can actually do, let's say, a subgrid inside of the sidebar and already get the code for that. Like here you have like the sidebar class and you have the options and config, and inside the CSS is going to, you will have like, this is the grid template areas for the sidebar, and this is the grid template areas for like how config work and options work. In this sense, obviously, like if we only want two, we don't need like, for example, like this many columns. Like with two is going to be good, and this is how things work. So the thing is that if we remove now the sidebar, we are going to lose everything, and like that's quite sad, let's say. So it will be really cool, like if when we have something here, we could somehow like edit it, like change the name, or actually like move it to another place, or make it bigger, or something like this. And this is something that right now in Layoutit you cannot do, and right now in the open source version you cannot do. So how we are going to do it? Let's say that for UX right now, let's say that when we press the sidebar button, this name, we want to enter like a edit mode, and like be able to work, like modify it, like change the name, and then save that particular scene. And what we can do is that reuse the same way that selection work. It will be nice, like when you are actually selecting certain cells to create a new area, it's already working like a selection. It has a save button, it has a close button, and you can change the name there. So it will be cool, like when we press like that name. So we are going to be like removing this particular area like temporarily and created like a selection that we can modify with that. So that's the idea. Again, like feel free to watch this in with a delay later for anybody that wants to leave right now. So let's see how we can do it. How things work is that this particular part, all this is the grid editor component. Inside the grid editor component, a grid has a list of areas that are saved. For example, like the sidebar is saved. Here there is another area that is saved. So for each of them, there is going to be an area editor, and this is recursive. Like in the area editor, if you press the subgrid, this is another of the grid editors, like the first one. And each of the editor can have an area editor, and so on, so on. You can keep going. So this is how it works, and there is also a selection component in the editor that is the one that lets you do this, and you can close it or you can save it. And this is per area, so you can do one here, and you can actually like let it be, and do another one here, and you will have two of these selections, one for each of the grids. This one is the internal subgrid, and this is the other one. So that is like the components, how things work. And inside of each of the areas, there is this particular toolbar that is called the area info. And in the area info, there is an area name, and there is some area buttons. So if we go to the code, let's see if I can put this like that. Yeah, better. So let's go to the code, and let's open these components that I just said. Like, so we have the grid editor. In the grid editor, we will have an area editor for using V4 for each of the grid areas. And you will have to specify a key for like maintaining like the identity of that DOM node in the same way that you do in React. And for each particular of these area editors, we are passing like as a prop the area that we want. This particular grid here is a reactive variable that also like if you see here, so it's computed from the props that the props has an like you pass an area to a grid editor, and you can get it from there. Let's open the area editor. It's going to be closing them. That's very good. So this is the area editor. Again, as I said, like there is an area info where in the area info you have the buttons and the name. So we can start there. Like, so we open the area info, and inside the area info is the area name. So let's go directly there. And how we are going to do this is the area name, and we are going to do on click. This is the way Vue works. Normally, you will use a directive that is called v-on, and what is the name of the event. But there is a shortcut for Vue that is like using this particular sign. So on click, we want to. There is a special variable that is called emit that is part of the template system. Let's just look quickly. Let's go like that. And what is going to do is we are going to emit from this area name and edit a custom event. Like one thing that the components in Vue can do is that you can directly emit whatever you want here, and you can pass like the event and things like this. And this is quite cool because the child components can notify the parent that something like needs to be done. So when we click, we're going to call this emit. There is a pointer event none here. So let's put pointer event all, because if not, it's not going to work. So this is the first change. Let's go to the area info now. One thing that is important is quite bad, like I don't know why it works like this, is that custom events don't bubble like the normal events. So if from the area name you start to like do a custom event of edit, it doesn't go above its own parent. So normally, like you will have this area name for example, if the area name will be directly in the grid editor, we can grab it from there. But when you put it inside other components, for example, like the area name is inside area info here, then we cannot do that. So that is quite bad, because like when you move a component, like an area name is in one place and you move it to another, then you have to go and edit in all the places. Maybe there is some like developer decision there that I don't understand quite right. But so the way to do it is that we are going to listen for the edit event here, and we are going to emit it again. So what this is going to do is that the area info is going to also emit an edit when it detects that the area name like did an edit. So with this, we have already like we can go to the area editor, and as you see here, we have like the area info, and now again we can say like when we have an edit, let's emit the same thing like this. So what we did there, like we are like emitting the event, like just passing it around, so we can grab it from where we want it, that is the grid editor. So when we are here now, let's say if we go to, this is where we create for a grid editor, where we create like all the areas, or the areas editor for the areas of that grid. And here we can actually finally set like on edit, do something. So let's say like for now, we could say like edit area and pass what is the area. So we need to pass now a method, edit area. Let's go here and anywhere, it doesn't matter. Later we can arrange, we can export a function that is called edit area and receive an area. And we are going to console log editing area. Let's also open the store. We have a store file, a JS file that is actually included like globally from other parts. And what this store defines is a few refs, the main area of the application, that is the one that you are editing, and an area has like certain properties, like it is all plain objects. So an area will have a name, a color. It can have a grid or not. Like the main area obviously have a grid to start with, but later if you can have areas without, or you can have some grid later. And the area also defines its own grid region that is defined where it is in the parent grid. And we can access the parent also there. So this store will expose these refs so we can work, and there is like a current area that we can use to access the current from the different parts of the application directly. This is because the application is simple. Obviously, like there are ways to inject this variable in a component tree, so you can have like two layoutits working at the same time. Like we didn't want it to support that at this point. So like this simple, it's working quite fine. So like this store, like let's modify it so it stays. And with this, we should be able to check what we did. Let's see. something is not working. Component is missing in template or random function. With editor area project. Let's experiment. So what's going on? Let's check what we did. So this should be fine. On edit, we want to edit the area. This looks fine. We are exporting a function edit area. Okay, let's check like if we remove this. I really miss like proper view tools like for the browser. At this point, they are not quite fine working. So this is working good. Okay, so let's see what we did wrong here. We should be able to pass the edit area. Okay, so now it looks that it's working. I don't know what it changed that. So what we should be like if we have an area A, if we click now the A, we should see in the developer tools that we are editing that particular area. So again, like when we press this area name, we are raising a custom event that the parent will just like push it up until it reaches the main grid editor. And now that we have that, like we have another component that is the selection area component. That is that one that I show you, that when you are actually selecting things like this, that this is a component that is maintaining the state of what is the current name and what is actually selected for a particular grid is always there. And so we can actually like there is a ref to that particular component. In view in the templates, you can actually define for the area selection with a string. This is the selection ref, and so you can access it later from other parts of the template. And we can actually say that what we want is this component, the selection, this instance of the component to edit this area. So actually, let's remove where it is, the one, the edit area from here. I think I already removed it. So we need to now open that area selection. Let's go there. And in the area selection, we have input for the name, for the area name. We have the buttons to remove it and to save it, that you can only save it if it is a valid area name. That it means that there isn't any other area in the application that has the same name. This is a restriction that we place. We could actually like allow for the same name in subgrids, like we could modify that at one point. And that is the particular how it works, and it defines a grid area that it's defined like using the same grid of the parent. It will place itself in that grid in one particular like using the lines, like let's say, in one particular place. And when you are moving things, like when you press in one of the grid cells, it is doing that computation to see where it starts and where it ends. So what we are going to do is here, let's create a function that is called edit area, and we're going to receive the area. So we want to do the area name. And how things work here, there is a grid name first. That is the ref that has the name for this area. It should be area name. So we are going to set that particular one to the area name for a start, because we want the new selection to have the same name as before. And there is a selection. This is also a reactive variable that it holds what is the current selection. It doesn't matter that much the structure, but let's grab it here. So it's the same thing that when we start with the cell down, what we are going to do is say that the new selection will have a certain start and a certain end that should be the same start and end of the area. So we start from the same position. We, instead of a random color, that when you do a new selection you always have a random color, we have to maintain like the normal color. And there is a variable that controls like when it is the first time that you are doing it or no, and that actually modifies something, because if there is if it is already there, when you start to edit it, the selection, it should act a little bit different. So we're going to place this in false. Again, like this is not that much important. And for the start and the end, let's go to utils. And we have a function that is called create section that we give a call and a row. And this will be useful for creating the start and the end that we need. Let's import that from util here. So we need the create section, and here we can create a new section called row, and an area has a property that is called grid duration, that this is where it is in the particular grid. And we can, so if we do like grid duration, we can do like start call, and the row will be grid duration. Let me check the grid duration. It should be search for that. Grid duration to criteria. So grid area to grid duration, this is the format. There is a row and a start and an end, and a call and a start and an end for that particular section. So this is what we need. Then it is the other way around. This is called start. Just to double check. Yes. And this is row start. Again, this particular part, it doesn't matter that much. Grid duration called end. and grid version. Oh. So then we should have like, so when we are editing this area, like we are modifying some of the reactive variables. So we are modifying the grid name and we are modifying the selection. So the component should like re-render itself and it should, let's see how it works. So we have this particular here, and like if we press the name, so nothing happened. There is a bug. No, there it is. So there was some loading state that failed. So basically we click it and now we have the selection with the save and the cross button. And if we are like moving it around, we can actually modify it. And if we change the name, we could save it and it should work. There is some problems. For example, like when I press, so the focus is not here. That should, like, if we check the cell down, so we need to do this. Let me see. So with this, like we have a name input element reference. This is another way to reference things from inside the script. You define it like as a ref also. And inside of your input, you say that this ref is going to be with this particular variable, and you can access it without problems, as it will be like a reactive variable. So we are focused once timeout starts. There is a next tick function that should work, but it's not working in the cell down, so I will not try it here. This means that when we click, now we can get focus and directly edit it. That is quite good, so we can remove. Something that happened is that when we press, we can like edit it and do it bigger, but we cannot do it smaller because we have the area that is actually getting our events, and we cannot go there, and that is like quite sad. So we and also like if it is quite complex, the area behind, like it will be a little bit difficult, so we should remove it while we are editing. For that, we can, like in the store, let's go to the store quickly. So as I said, like each area will have, will be a plain object with these reactive variables. Reactive is deep, like it's everything that you put is going to be reactive. So that's how it works in Vue. So we can place here a variable that is going to be called, like, if it is editing. We can do it here, or like maybe we could have like the selection, what is editing. This will allow to have like several edits at the same time, and like for now we can do it like this just to check how it works. With this in place, in the grid editor, instead of drawing all the areas, we could actually, like, let's say like valid areas, or let's say like areas to show or something like that. And this will be, let's do it like a method that we want to show these areas, and we can export that function, areas to show. And we have a grid reactive variable, so we accept grid.value, and there is some areas there, and we need to actually filter the ones that we are not editing. So if we are not editing something, we are going to show it. And once we have this in the area selection, we can actually say, like, when we start something, let's say like editing area dot editing equals true. So when we are editing an area, it's going to be like editing it. Again, this is reactive because area is a reactive variable. And so when we access the editing equal true, everything that depends on that particular area is going to be reworked and re-rendered. So it didn't work. Let's check what happened. Again, components is missing. Something weird is happening there. Okay. Let me see. We have editing false here. This should be good. And then in the grid editor, we have the areas to show. That is a function. Let's return the areas that we want to show. This should be fine. And here we want to show in areas to show. It should be fine. Let's let's do it again just in case. That didn't happen to me before, obviously. So now we are fine. I don't know what is going on with that one. So we have an A here, and now when we press the button, you see that it disappeared, and it's only showing the selection. So now we can actually work with it. And if we remove it right now, it is still editing, so it doesn't work quite right. We have to do a little bit more there. So in the area selection, what we need to do now is that when we are going to save it or when we are going to close it, we need to do something else. So when we close, right now it's only doing like selection null, like we're going to close selection. When we do the click, and we can actually, let's go here, and we export that function so it's available for the template. So selection. So we want to remove the selection because we don't want it anymore. And actually, if the selection has an area, because we have to save it a little for later, we are going to say editing equal false because we are not editing it anymore. We should then in the edit area keep a reference to that particular area that we're working with. So here we have the area. So when we close, we should be fine, we are stopping to edit it. And actually what is missing is the save, because normally in a selection save, what is going to happen is that it's going to create a new state, and we don't want that. So we need to do something like that if the selection has an area, because we are editing one and it's not like a new one, then we are going to do something different than push a new area in the array of areas. So what we can do actually is here we have to modify, so the area name is going to be equal to the grid name value, that is this reactive variable that is tracking the current name of the input. And we want actually the grid region. We want to update it also to be like the new one. So area.grid region equal to the same thing that we will do otherwise. And we are not editing it anymore. So that should be fine. And then things should work the same way, like we are removing the selection because we're not selecting anymore, and the name we are putting it in false. So let's check. So we have an A here, and if we edit it, it's not showing it anymore. We can edit it, we can change the name, we save it, and now we have a new one here. And if we have another one, let's say, and we want actually to edit this one, we click it because we wanted it to be bigger. Then we make it bigger. And we don't want actually, like we don't like it. We want it to be like it was before. So better we close it. And actually is not placing it as, it looks like the editing is not working. So we should check that one. But if not, that is working. And if we edit like a subgrid, and we put here like the config, and here are some options. So when we click on the AV, actually like it's going to remove all the areas, so we can modify it. And if we save it, let's say we cannot save it actually is because the name is the same and we have this restriction, so we have to change that also. But if we change the name, it should be working. We still have some issues like that is the subgrid is not working there, but the subgrid is there. So actually like it should be just an issue of how we are editing things, let's say. So edit. This didn't work. Let's change that particular one so it doesn't bother us. There is a check for the button that the button is going to be disabled if the area is not valid. But in the case that we are going to edit, it should be that it's not true that the selection dot area, if there is a selection dot area, that name selection dot area name equals to the grid name that we are doing. So it should happen that like it's going to be invalid if this is not true. Let's see if that works. Let's click on one B. So we edit it, and now you can see that you can save it directly because the condition is right. And if actually, let's say, so you have A and we have B. So if we edit A, with A we can save it, but with B, actually, you can save it too, so it's not working, but we have to check that also. So we can check just a little bit more if later we can do that condition better. We can extract it in a method and do it correctly, but at least it's going to let us save it now. Let's see in the close selection if we see why it's not working. So when we close the selection, yeah, so this is a problem, and this is one of the gotchas that I told you, that we are using, like when you use the reactive variables in the template, Vue automatically do the unwrap and places the dot value for you. So if we use the selection here, as we were doing, like selection equal null, that is equivalent to saying selection.value equal null, because things in the template, you are only going to always be accessing the value of the thing. So Vue automatically do that unwrapping for you. But because we move that particular one as a method, when you're working inside the script, that unwrapping is not done automatically. So what we should be doing here is that actually, like, we want the value of that selection. That selection.area is null. So this is why it's important to have proper linting tools. Like when the ecosystem of Vue is more advanced, it's going to be better. And seeing this, you're going to have a warning for sure. So we should actually place like this. And now the close should work, because if there is an area, we are placing it in editing equal false. And maybe we did the same mistake here. Yes, we did the same mistake. And nobody like complain at all, because we don't have the proper tools for that. But then if this it is like that, then actually, like, we could say cons area equal that. Selection area. So if there is a selection area, so we want that name to be like that, we want the iteration to be like that, and we want it to be editing equal false. So now with this change, we actually can reload. And if we say, for example, this is going to be the cyber, and we save it, again, it's not working. Let's see if it is the same thing. Selection area is not a function. I think we call selection area exactly the same. Yes, we just name it exactly the same as a function that we have. That's pretty good. So let's just put a. Just to be done with it. So if there is one, we are changing the name, the declaration, and we are editing true, and it's already supposedly reloaded. And now let's put the cyber here. We want to edit it, and we say, actually, we want it to be bigger. We save it, and we have the proper cyber. And if we want, like, we put the header, we save it, but we realized that we didn't want this, because we wanted the cyber to be smaller than this. Actually, like, we can change it the place, we can change it whenever we want. We can save it here, and this is the header, we can edit it. Let's say, like, we want it to be like this, we save it, and we are now editing it properly. And if we do the cyber like bigger, and we realize that we didn't want it, we can close it, and we are done with it. And if, let's see, if the last one is going to be a subgrid that has config and options. So if we edit the cyber, we are just editing the cyber, everything else is gone. And when we save it, the config and options are back there, and we can edit even if it has like nested grids. So everything else should be now working, and this should be like the main content. And with this, we have a new feature that this like we can edit things that before we couldn't. So like in the original thing, like you weren't able to actually like edit it, and you have to remove it and do it again. So I know that this was quite quick, but I hope that it was better to see the code like implementing something useful. I don't know if you have some question or if it's anybody actually there. Let's check in the call.
Martin, can you do a workshop for dummies of Vue.js?
We can have like if you like some of these contents, we can have one of a particular thing like just reactivity or just how Vite works or things like this. Like sorry, it was long. I wanted to like we were working quite a bit to do the open source release, and I wanted to show a bit how you work it.
It's super valuable information here. I need to watch this again to learn a little bit more. But thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Mariana. And let's see if now with the new version, we are going to have another go at retweets and keep growing the tool. Somebody else have questions or something to share?
No, I think it's super interesting the way that the Vue changed from the other version, because all the computed and all those things, it was like really confusing for me at the beginning. And with this setup, I think it's much easier. But I see that the like you use there the selected area dot value or things like that. That is like yeah, it's a little like confusing also, that dot value. But
yeah, totally
really interesting.
Thanks, Franco. Yeah, that same thing happened to also how it's called, like with React, when hooks went out and like everybody was like, wow, like this amazing and how ergonomic. And then at the beginning with the simple apps and the demos that they do in the conferences, you don't see like all the edge cases, and you don't see that now your application is for rendering everything every time you touch it. And then you start to really have to think what are the dependencies that you pass to use effect. And like you really need to think about like using use memo and use callback, and to try to avoid, because every time that re-renders, everything is created again, and then like the props that you're going to pass it are different. And so things at the beginning look like quite beautiful in a presentation, and then you end up like seeing all these like edge cases and things to learn how to do it. In the same way, like React, for example, like has linting tools, for example, like that will tell you, hey, you forgot to put a dependency here in the use effect list. In the same way, the Vue dev tools and like all the things that Visual Studio Code is going to have with this is going to actually help a lot, because it's going to tell you actually remove that and things like this. But it's difficult to see. For example, like we have like the sizings. When we parse it in a structure of a value and a unit. So for example, like if you go to, let's say, let's go to the gap editor. So we go to common gap input. So here, for example, like a unit will have like a value and a unit, like, and now I'm doing like gap.value.value, and it's looking terrible. Like, okay, like if I use this, I will start doing like the size and unit instead of value and unit, but this is just terrible to look at. and it's really easy in the same way that when we do it, we did it in the live coding, we forgot about it. It can happen. So linting will help. I really wish that at one point the Vue community will do something like saying, like, let's say, like gap.value, and this is compiled to be gap.value. You cannot always do like this, like let the compiler always unwrap it, because sometimes you actually want to pass it as a ref and not grab the value, because when you grab the value, sometimes you lose the reactivity for that. There are some things, for example, like the composables that are this kind of share thing, like the use, for example, use is active area, use grid dimensions. For example, if I have a use grid dimensions that you pass a ref of a grid, and will get you two new computed values, the calls number and rows number. So you can use this one and you don't have to access all the way. But here I need the reference, because if you don't give me the reference and only give me the value, if later like the props change or something like that, this is not going to work. Like I need to call grid value inside the computed for things to work. So actually, like again, I think it's quite good. We could get used to it with proper tooling, and it's really interesting what kind of things it allow. But it has the same problems that React has, in that sense that you really need to understand what is going on, how closures work, and these kind of things. I think, in my opinion, like the React hooks are even more difficult, because there is a lot of gotchas also there that you have to take into account. Especially with these things that on every render you're redoing the whole hooks. So that at least the part that is doing it just in the setup function, I think that makes things a little bit easier. Somebody else has any ideas, questions? If not, okay. So thanks a lot for staying. Like there is still 11 people here after like 2 hours. So thanks a lot for staying until the end. Like one third of the people is not bad. And I don't know, I hope it was helpful, and see you next week.
Thanks, Mati. See you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great talk.
Bye-bye.
Bye.